Hi friends, welcome to or welcome back to the channel Jane Reads. My name is Jeanette and today I have recommendations for books with healthcare workers in it. So for my Christian fiction bingo, one of the prompts for April is a healthcare worker. So one of the characters needs to be a healthcare worker. Doesn't have to be a main character. Like that's kind of what I'm going to recommend to you. But it just, if somebody is a healthcare worker, like they end up going to the hospital and end up interacting with a nurse, well, there was a healthcare worker. And the reason the April prompt is healthcare worker is because Alma gave me this prompt and she used to be in the healthcare field and April is her birthday month. So I will link Alma below and go over and wish her a happy birthday in the month of April. So this is in honor of her. Okay, so I have a ton of books here to recommend. I have not covered all healthcare professions for sure. And I've sorted these in genres. So I'm going to start with historical fiction, then move into contemporary romance, and then move into romantic suspense. So there are some professions that will overlap in both genres. So I've tried to group as much together as I can. So let's start with dentist in historical romance. So the two books that I have to recommend is A Lady in Attendance by Rachel Fordham and While the City Sleeps by Elizabeth Camden. Now, A Lady in Attendance is a standalone book and the main female character goes for work for a dentist and he becomes the male main character. This is set in New York State in the late 1800s, 1898 is when it starts. And we see Hazel trying to rebuild her life after spending 5 years in a reformatory. And she makes a group of friends and they really try to support her. I really enjoyed this book. And the other one, While the City Sleeps by Elizabeth Camden, is book one of the Women of Midtown series. It is set in New York City at the early 1900s. 1913 is when it starts. And the main female character is a dentist, which is unexpected at that time, like in that year. And she works for a dentist office that does not abide by regular office hours. And it's really interesting as she strikes up a friendship with a police officer and we just see what goes from there and kind of the things that she has to battle. So again, I really enjoyed this one. The next group of books is still historical fiction, but they all feature a nurse or more than one nurse. I have 5 books here and 4 of them are by the same author. 3 are in fact from the same series. So let's start with the standalone though. The first one is To the Farthest Shores by Elizabeth Camden. This one is early 1900s. You're following Jenny, who is a nurse and then gets assigned to be kind of the personal nurse to somebody who is trying to overcome an addiction. And you just kind of see all the battle scars of that and the trauma of trying to deal with that while they're going through withdrawal. There is a romance that happens in this book, not with that character, but kind of the whole thing is kind of interwoven. I really enjoyed seeing this develop and following through, and it really felt very real life of what Jenny was battling and what the patient was battling and stuff. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. The next one is book 2 of the Wings of Glory series. That is A Memory Between Us by Sarah Sundin. Yes, it is a book 2. But yes, you could read it out of order. You are following a nurse, Ruth, and a pilot, Jack, and Jack gets injured and ends up in the ward where Ruth is working, and a friendship develops. There are mentions of the characters in book 1 in this because Jack is the brother of the guy from Walt from book 1. But the storyline does not carry over that much. You really could read it out of order. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed the banter in this one. And there is a second nurse as well, May, who is Ruth's friend and co-worker, who kind of plays a very prominent role in this book. So this one has 2 nurses. And then the series is the Wings of Nightingale series by Sarah Sundin. So book 1 is With Every Letter. Book 2 is On Distant Shores. And book 3 is In Perfect Time. And this one, you are following 3 flight nurses throughout the series. You see them kind of become friends in the first book, and then you're following the different friends in each book. I do think you do need to read this series in order to really get to know the girls and where they are coming from. There is like other characters that show up as later on, and there's not as much interaction with all 3. Oh, my first book is ripped. And I caught my finger on it just then. But yeah, I highly recommend this series. I also really enjoyed it, and this is World War II. Okay, staying with Sarah Sundin, I have another historical fiction, which is also book 2 of a series, but this one follows a pharmacist. So that is Anchor in the Storm. It is part of the Waves of Freedom series. Did I say the wrong name? I don't think so. So we're following Lillian, who is a pharmacist, has just graduated and is trying to get a job. She ends up in Boston working at a pharmacy, and something is suspicious about some drug prescriptions. And she ends up with Arch, a naval officer, and trying to figure out what is going on, because it appears that some seamen from a naval ship are involved in this. And Lillian is the sister of the male main character in book 1 and is roommates with the female from book 1. So there is overlap throughout the series, but again, I think you could read it as a standalone without reading book 1 first, because the main storyline does not carry over. It's just characters that carry over. So this would spoil the relationship from book 1, but otherwise, and the male character here, Arch, oh yes, is best friends with the male from book 1. Now we've got a historical fiction with a doctor, and this is again from the early 1900s. Let me check. Oh no, still 1893, and it's a western set in Texas, and that is At Love's Command by Karen Witemeyer. This is book 1 of the Hangers Horsemen series, so we meet the 4 horsemen in this series, and the female character is a doctor. And so, yeah, I enjoyed getting to know these 4 guys and see what they were doing and how they interacted. And I just love Karen Witemeyer's writing, and she just is able to pull me in and really keep me invested to the characters and really care about them. So yes, Western setting, horses involved, I really enjoyed it. Okay, let's go into contemporary romance. So I have 3 books, and all 3 feature doctors. So the first one is one I do not own physically, and that is Let It Be Me by Becky Wade. This is book 2 of the Misty River series, and the male main character is a heart surgeon in this one, Sebastian. This is a series that probably should be read in order, but I don't think you have to again. I don't think so. Like, you really get to know the characters, and other than the earthquake storyline from when the main group of characters became friends a number of years ago, and when they were teens probably, and now they are all adults, and so they do interact. They still get together on a regular basis, so you see that. So there is a little bit of like the earthquake storyline with a flashback to let you know, but there's not as much in book 2 as there was in book 1, because it's kind of setting up the scene and the history and stuff, whereas book 2 is much more the present day and following what's happening with the characters. And in this one, we're following Sebastian, and there is a bit of a love triangle in this book, if I remember. But yeah, again, it was enjoyable and just a sweet romance. The next 2 books, as I said, also feature doctors, are from the Hope Harbor series. Now, this is a series that you do not need to read in order. Each book has new main characters, and so while the community members in the background are the same, and it will kind of spoil some relationships from earlier, but it doesn't really tell you a whole lot about it, so you could read them out of order. But the 2 books are actually books 4 and 5, and that is Pelican Point by Irene Hannon and Driftwood Bay by Irene Hannon. So Pelican Point is about a crumbling lighthouse is not a part of the inheritance that Army Dr. Ben expects to claim when he returns to Hope Harbor. Fresh out of the service, he wants to unload the tower of bricks, decompress from years of treating battlefield trauma, and prepares to launch his civilian career. Hope Harbor Herald editor Marcy has other ideas. She may not be a Hope Harbor native, but the small Oregon seaside town has become her home, and she's determined to save the lighthouse. Sparks fly as the 2 go head to head over the fate of the lighthouse. What's gonna happen? I really enjoyed this one, and so yeah, I highly recommend it. The other one, Driftwood Bay, features Dr. Logan West. After tragedy upends her world, Jeanette Mason retreats to the tiny Oregon seaside town of Hope Harbor to create a new life. Vowing to avoid emotional attachments, she focuses on running her lavender farm and tea room, until a new neighbor with a destructive dog and a forlorn little girl invades her turf. But she needn't worry. Dr. Logan West is too busy coping with an unexpected family, a radical lifestyle change, and an unruly pup to have any interest in his neighbor. Yet, when Jeanette and Logan find themselves pulled into the life of a tattered family fleeing persecution in war-torn Syria, they might discover that love sometimes comes calling when it's least expected. Okay, let's move into romantic suspense. So I have 1 book with a nurse, and that is Beneath the Surface by Lynn H. Blackburn. This is book 1 of the Dive Team Investigation series. This was the first book I ever read by Lynn H. Blackburn, and I just fell in love with it and couldn't wait to read more by her. And so we are following Leah, I was right, who is an oncology nurse practitioner who needed a change. She thought she left her troubles behind when she moved to Carrington, North Carolina, and took a job in the emergency department of the local hospital. But when someone tampers with her breaks, she fears the past has chased her down and reaches out to her high school friend turned homicide investigator, Ryan, for help. What is somebody targeting Leah? What is going on? I absolutely loved this book, and I love seeing the group of characters come together, and then the rest of the series follows that group. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it. Okay, the next one follows a dentist. It is book 2 of the Gossamer Falls series. That is Break My Fall by Lynn H. Blackburn. And we are following Meredith, who is a dentist, And the male main character is the police chief, and Meredith is trying to offer dental services to those who cannot afford it and goes out into kind of dangerous communities to help them and gets involved in some possible drug trafficking area, and her life gets threatened. And it's really interesting to see how the two interact and kind of how they really push each other away, even though they want to be together, or kind of, I really enjoyed. It's not my favorite of the series, but I did really enjoy it. And I really like the cousin relationship that we see built up throughout this series. Again, I don't think you have to read it in order, but I do recommend it. Okay, and then book 1 and book 2 of the Lake City Heroes series by Lynette Eason. So book 1 is Double Take, and it features a physician assistant. And then book 2 is Target Acquired, which features a SWAT team medic. So book 1 is she survived a murder plot and her attacker is dead, isn't he? So what is her name? Lainey. I'm like, I know it starts with an L. Lainey fought off her attacker, thought she killed him, and now she's seeing him places. Maybe he didn't die. What happened? And so that's hence the double take. Like, what is she saying? I really enjoyed this book. Really enjoyed it. It was really fun and kept me guessing of what was really going on. And was he dead or was he not dead? Like, what? And then book 2, Target Acquired, is the SWAT team medic who is Kenzie, who has just become on the SWAT team, but she's the only female. And some of the guys on the SWAT team aren't too happy about that. And are they targeting her, or is somebody else targeting her? And will the SWAT team kind of come together? Will this help develop the group? I don't know. So yeah, I did enjoy it. I didn't love it, but I did enjoy it. I say, like, if you enjoy fast-paced action stories, give this one a try. Okay, and then I'm sorry to do this to you for this series, but I have book 1 and book 4 of the Extreme Measures series by Lynette Eason. Now, book 1, I don't feel bad about at all because you start the series. Book 4, if you haven't started the series already, oops, I'm asking you to read a series. I'm not really asking you to read a series, but yeah. Okay, so book 1 is Life Flight, which follows an EMS helicopter pilot. So a little bit different, but she is able to step in and help with some of the medical needs at times with her role. And so this one, she has been called in to rescue somebody off the top of a mountain, and then they have to do an emergency landing. And where they go to land, there's a serial killer loose. And FBI is trying, FBI? I think so. Yes, FBI is trying to capture that serial killer. And she kind of gets caught in some of the crosshairs a little bit. And fast-paced action for sure. Then book 4 is Countdown. And this one, you're following a flight paramedic who is friends with the character from book 1. Kind of all 4 books in the series follows a group of friends. And so in Countdown, a stalker out to finish what he started, a U.S. Marshal who's vowed to protect, and one woman determined to put the past in the past. So Raina is running and from her past. And it's hard to stop running when you've been running for so long. She had a stalker. She changed her name and disappeared. But now it seems like maybe her stalker is back, or is somebody else stalking her. Again, fast-paced for sure. Okay, and the last one I have to recommend. I've only read book 1 in the series, but it is a series that follows the same characters throughout all 3 books. So this is one I could continue. And book 1 is Edge of Dusk by Colleen Coble of the Annie Pederson series. And the male character is a doctor in this one. And Annie is, she's a law enforcement ranger. And she seems to be getting targeted. John and Annie used to have a relationship, and now John is back. And what's going to happen? So book 1 was not my favorite of the series, but this is a series I think you really need to read in order from what I understand. I haven't read book 2 and book 3, so I don't know for sure. But because you're following all the same characters throughout the series, that's why I'm saying you should probably read it in order. Because you really get to know like Annie and John's past, and can they overcome that past. And then book 2 is Dark of Night. And in this one it says, the law is about justice, not grace. But perhaps Ranger Annie Pederson can find a way to have both. So from my understanding is we are following John and Annie and trying to see, can they overcome their past issues and build a future together? I don't know. And then there's going to be it is suspense after all. There's going to be some danger involved somewhere along the line. So this is one book that is a possibility for me to read. And just an FYI, book 3 is Break of Day. Again, because I haven't read book 2, I haven't read book 3, so I have no idea. I just know that it's Annie and John again. Okay, and the possibilities that I have on my list is Code Trauma by Lynette Eason. This features a flight nurse, and it is a novella. That's about all I can tell you. It is one of her novellas that I have not read, so it is on my list if I want to read her to zero. And so, yeah, that's the possibility. The other one I have is Appalachian Song by Michelle Shockley. This one features a midwife. Again, that's about all I know about this book. I know I read the description ages ago, but I don't remember a lot about it. I've fallen in love with Michelle Shockley in 2025, and I want to read more of her books. And Appalachian Song is one of my 26 and 26 books, so I need to read it this year. So that is why it is on this list, because it has a midwife character. Okay, so those are all my books with some sort of character, or a character in some sort of healthcare. Now, I know there are a bunch of other professions in healthcare that I did not mention today. These are just the ones that I knew I had books for and stuff, or that came to mind right away when I thought about it. Please let me know, what book do you think of when you think of healthcare worker? Or what book are you thinking of reading for the challenge if you are participating in the challenge? I would love to chat in the comments below. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.